I want to draw you out on your sense of the quality of judges entering the system at this moment. Your father was the longest serving Chief Justice of India. You've had the longest term in a very long time. Your sons are practicing lawyers. Do you see them entering the judiciary? Would you like them to be part of the judicial system? What's your message to young lawyers practicing out there who are concerned about whether it's worth their while to spend the rest of their lives or the rest of their working lives being a part of India's judiciary?
Well, I'll answer your question at two levels. Am I concerned about the quality of judges? When I became a judge, or perhaps even before that, when you were asked to become a judge, it was a matter of honor. Nobody said no. Now, increasingly, you find young lawyers whom you ask to become judges of the High Court coming and saying, I'm so thankful to you, Chief Justice, but this is not for me. There may be a variety of reasons, not all of it dealing with the emoluments of judges, because I feel that, whatever you pay a judge, it can never compare with what a lawyer makes. And the reason why you become a judge is not certainly because of, the perks of the office. That's the least important part of the office. You become a judge out of the mission to do good to others. And there's an enormous amount of good which you can do to society, to others, by being a judge. So I always tell young people two things. If you don't accept judgeship today, then you will get the judges you deserve. They don't complain, 10 years down the line on the quality of judges. You have to have good young people enter the profession and accept accept judgeship. And honestly, I have no cause to be, to say anything adversely about the service conditions of judges. I'm very happy with what I have. And if you're not happy with what you have, there's no limit to human greed and to human aspirations. I believe our service conditions are extremely good, but they can be improved upon, certainly, as inflation catches up. I wouldn't answer the latter part of your question about my own sons. It's a choice for them to make.
Well, no, of course it's a choice for them to make. I don't know to what extent they listen to their father. That's not the point. The question is, would you like them, either of them or both of them, to become judges?
I'll tell you, my answer is very simple, and I've had this conversation with them. Now that I've been in the system for 23 years as a judge, and I was a lawyer for over 20 years, I find that there is a great amount of good which you can do in society, whether you're a lawyer or whether you're a judge. It depends upon what path you chart out for yourself. Do you want to be a lawyer, one of those lawyers who will only, earn more money and more money and more money? Or do you also want to be a lawyer who will also appear for just social causes, appear for people who don't have access to resources, appear for that convict who has been, languishing in jail for 20 years without an early remission? So it depends on what kind of lawyer you want to be. And I do believe lawyers have a very vital role to play in society. I always find that, if I've made a good point in a judgment, it's because of the fact that my eyes were opened by the lawyer who argued that case before me. So similarly applies to the judge. Are you going to be a judge? Years ago, a very distinguished colleague who was a senior of mine in the Bombay High Court told me that, look, you've just become a judge. And there are two choices before you. Do you want to become a judge who will be known for the number of cases that you disposed of, the statistic? Or do you want to be known as a judge for yourself of a person who tried to make a difference to society? The choice is yours.
How would you like, once your term is done, Chief Justice, for India to remember your legacy?
Well, that's for them to judge.
How would you like it to be?
I think for me, the bottom line of the work which we do is that no case is ever too big or ever too small. The smallest grievance of citizens has, I believe in my court, commanded the same respect as a very important constitutional issue which we decide. Because in the small cases which you decide, you touch the lives of human beings. In the important constitutional cases which you decide, you chart the future of Indian society. So there's a great amount to be, learned from every bit of the work which you do. There is this perception that why does the Supreme Court have to deal with so many small cases? Mm-hmm. You said that we have about 68,000 cases. There are actually 42,000 cases. 26,000 cases are what we call the connected matters, similar cases. So, when we group those cases, a bunch of cases gets disposed of. So the pendency is much less. So a lot of people say that why does the Supreme Court of India deal with such small cases of bail? That's one of the arguments which is, my answer is this: no case of bail is a small case because it deals with the personal liberty of a citizen. There are two models of justice which Supreme Courts across the world have adopted. Take the American Supreme Court. The American Supreme Court sits about 80 days in a year. They deal with about 180 cases. They pick out their cases. Our model, which the founding fathers of the Indian Constitution gave us, was a very different model. It was a model based on access to justice. It was a model which saw the transformation of a society from a colonial to an independent society. So when Dr. Ambedkar was drafting these clauses of the Constitution and the other members of the Constituent Assembly, they created a model where the Supreme Court would have its doors open and access to justice would be very broad. The problem with that is, of course, that you have this pendency of cases. But that's for good or bad. I think for the good, that's the model we've adopted.
There are quite a few people who think हमारे judges छुट्टी बहुत लेते हैं. The judges, the courts are shut for way too long, given especially the pendency. How do you respond to this general sense in society that judges are off for too long? And how do you think we can reduce pendency?
Okay. So I'm really thankful to you for asking me this question.
I thought you'd be angry with me for asking.
No, this really, it's a very serious issue and I must answer this as candidly as possible. People see us sitting in court from 10:30 to 4. We handle between 40 and 60 cases every day in the Supreme Court. The work which we do between 10:30 and 4 every day in the Supreme Court is a fraction of the work which we do. In order to be ready to deal with the other cases which are going to come up the next day, you spend an equal amount of time in the evenings reading for the next day. Our judgments are in reserve. So on Saturdays, typically every judge of the Supreme Court will sit down and dictate judgments. On Sunday, all of us sit down and read for Monday. So without exception, and I'm not speaking for myself, without exception, every judge of the Supreme Court works for 7 days in a week. When it comes to the holidays, look at what the other Supreme Courts of the world are doing. The American Supreme Court, I have the statistics here before me. The American Supreme Court would sit for, can I just take a second to give you
certainly.
Just give me a moment, just a moment.
See, I see you were expecting that curveball.
Yes. The American Supreme Court sits about 8 to 9 days in a month, annually 80 days, and don't sit for 3 months in a year. The Australian High Court sits about 2 weeks in a month, annually less than 100 days, no sittings for 2 months. Singapore sits for 145 days in a year. The UK almost the same as us. The Supreme Court of India sits for about 200 days every year. What people don't know is this, that most of the time in the vacation is spent on preparing judgments which you have kept in reserve because you have just no time during the week when you are working 7 days just trying to keep ahead of the curve to deal with your cases. So vacation time is really time spent. The last vacation, the winter vacation, I was sitting with my 5 judicial clerks, keeping up on abreast on all the judgments which I had to deliver. Yes, at the end of it, in the summer vacation, you will get a week off with your family to travel. But another thing which we must bear in mind is judging is not about just disposing cases. It's not just about the statistic. It's about thinking through your cases. It's about reading the law, reading about where the law is going in other jurisdictions, thinking about where you want our society to be in terms of the output which you are going to produce. So unless you give your judges time to introspect, reflect, think about the work which you are going to do, you're not going to have quality of justice.